I don't see much change in the next 20 years. Unless we find frameworks how to accelerate clinical trials in humans, not in mice, not in worms or flies or whatever, but in humans. And I don't think there was such good hope for the future before Próspera appeared. It's fair to say, I think your life expectancy right now, even without any progress, is close to 100 years, and that gives us time, a lot of time.
This episode of the Free Cities podcast is brought to you by Veritas Villages. Now, Veritas Villages are freedom-oriented, energy self-sufficient luxury communities designed for people who want to enjoy peace of mind and real freedom in today's unpredictable world. Join a community of like-minded neighbours who value privacy and independence in a place where you can use Bitcoin, including for the purchase of your property. www.veritasvillages.com/free cities for more info, and in the meantime, enjoy the conversation. Good. Vladimir Leshko.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Correct.
I've got a very limited amount of information here. I'm challenging myself.
Well, at least you've got my name. That's something.
Yes, I have. Well, because we're on episode 150 something, and it's mainly Free Cities content. Well, I mean, it's Free Cities freedom content. So I've spoken about most things. So I can tug on most threads, but I suppose, in honesty, one of the things I've spoken the least about is probably longevity, that kind of stuff. Well, I had a guy called, what was his name? Oh, it's a bit embarrassing.
A medical doctor, right?
No. He was a guy who was proposing a sort of longevity city.
Oh, Lawrence Iron. Yeah.
Lawrence Iron.
Our good friend. Yeah.
Oh, you know Lawrence, right? Okay. Lawrence was the only person that I ended up really speaking to about, but he's not a scientist in any shape or form, is he?
Technically, I am a scientist. I have a master's degree in biomedical engineering, but I don't do a scientific job in the company, so I think I'm not qualified enough to go deeply into the science, but I have some sort of a helicopter view.
So what is the company? Unlimited Bio, are we talking about? Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Let's talk. So here's my observation of what's going on here. You're a gene therapy company, potentially, yes?
Yeah.
Unlimited Bio, biohacking, that kind of stuff, and you have basically positioned yourself in Próspera because of the regulatory environment.
Yeah, correct.
Right, perfect. Okay, tell me a bit more about Unlimited Bio then. Let's start there.
Our company started in 2024 when my co-founders Ivan and Nana, they were visiting an event called, I think, Vitalia or something city in Próspera.
Vitalia, yeah, that's Nicholas's, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, Nicholas and I think Lawrence was also on the team back then, so they were organizing it together. And, they learned about mini circles, so a gene therapy company working in Próspera and doing gene therapy experiments there. And, that led to a realization that actually in Próspera you can do stuff important for us as longevity enthusiasts and people who think aging is like the greatest villain of humankind. That Próspera gives us opportunities that no other country does, and it does give us in a way that we can be open about this. We can do clinical trials and officially register them, for example, on healthy volunteers who is just an example. For example, they want to run faster, or they want to think faster, whatever. So, and we can do a clinical trial on a certain drug or combination of therapies that will aimed at enhancement of those individuals, or that will be aimed at preventing certain disease from occurring. And, for example, we'll be collecting biomarkers that correlate with this disease. So registering such a trial outside of Próspera would be just impossible. I mean, I know how much time and effort you would spend in trying to pass different IRBs, ethical committees, and so on. And yeah, in Próspera, it basically takes around a month or so. And also, it depends on the regulations you pick, because Próspera gives you 3 tracks there. So first of all, you can, when you act in health space, you have to pick health is a regulated space because you can hurt other people, right? So you can pick 3 opportunities there. First of all, you can elect its so-called optimal regulation from one of the country.
OECD.
Sorry, it's called best practice countries. So it's like US, European Union, Japan, and so on. So for example, if you are an entrepreneur from Japan, you can just pick the same legal framework as in Japan. And then when you function there, you will just have to constantly show that you follow this framework to the regulator. Then the second option is designing your own regulation and getting it approved through some sort of like Próspera board, like government, so to say. Then the other option is just picking one of those already designed regulations. And in our case, that's what we did. We just picked the regulation of our partner, GUM Clinic, that they already developed specifically to do trials like gene therapy, stem cells, and so on.
Is that a particular country's regulation, or is that a Próspera thing?
No, they took, I think, like FDA regulation and adapted it to be a bit more flexible. So they have an IRB. So in order to register a clinical trial, we have to pass like an independent committee of 5 people composed, like according to the rules of how IRBs should be composed. So it should have 1 scientist, 1 non-scientist, 1 person like from outside of the field, and so on. So we have to get they have to review the safety data we present, like what's the rationale behind all this. So we kind of have some regulation on top of us. It's way less strict than we would have in the US, but still it doesn't allow us to do like basically anything that comes to our mind. And the last option there is just acting based on common law. And in this case, you're subject to triple liability, and you're also personally liable for what you do.
And you also, isn't there another layer on top of that, which is you need to be insured as well?
Yeah, correct.
So
correct.
It doesn't matter whether you can do all that correctly, but if no one's going to insure you, you still can't go ahead. So,
yeah.
And then the insurance company then basically does its own studies and background and stuff.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, this is one of the things I think people don't understand about Próspera. I think the meme is you can just go there and do whatever you want because you can create your own regulations. But they don't understand, not only is there an internal process, but then even when you've got that through, if you want to create your own regulation, you've then got to find someone to insure you, and they're going to go back and do that whole process again, and there's more risk for them in a way than there is for you. So it's a great system, but it's just completely misunderstood by most people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think people tend to simplify things, so they just hear Honduras clinical trials, and then you just go to conclusions without taking an effort to actually examine the documents, whatever.
Well, the other thing is, I think gene therapy. Oh God, even me, I'm very open-minded, but that already conjures up pictures of Frankenstein people and grafting things onto, almost certainly people will be biased against gene therapy. Gene therapy itself just sounds dangerous already. Put my mind at rest. You're someone that's actually involved in it. Why is gene therapy not as bad as I probably think it is?
Well, first of all, because it's a solution to, hundreds of thousands of diseases that we might inherit from our parents. And to give you a very close example, for example, 11 years ago, almost 11 years ago, I became a father. And my son was quite unexpectedly born completely deaf. completely dead.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And we realized that when he was 4 months old, and there's commercial genetic tests like 23andMe and so on. At that time, we were living in Russia, and they were not openly available. They became available probably a few years later. And when we did this test, like a cheapest test on the market, more or less, both me and my wife, and we had like the same, red flag that like keep in mind that you're a passive carrier of this genotype, that if you make a child with another person with the same genotype, you have a 25% chance of having a deaf child.
Really?
Yeah.
It's that easy to, it's that specific. You can, that seems really specific that you can just look at your genotype or genome or whatever it's called and say, right, if you two mate, there's a 25% chance. You can do that. Wow. It's that specific.
It's the 25% chance that you get a child with like a perfect, so to say, genotype, who won't be even a carrier of that gene. Then 50% of children will have the same genotype as you do, and 25% will be active carriers of a disease. It's like the simplest form of inheritance that I think I started it in school in like mid-school, something biology.
Malthus.
And now then 15 years later, so I'm actually facing it directly, this like form of inheritance that we did, simple problems on biology lessons, and I realized, that works. And but it's not too bad because it was solved with cochlear implantation. So he got implants at age 1 on both ears, and now he speaks perfectly, so people cannot really understand that he has problems hearing, and he speaks 3 languages like English, Dutch, and we live in Netherlands, and Russian. So that just impressed me, that how powerful technology can be, and in this case implants, that it can literally transform the life of a human, and like a human who just got his chance, was born. And it can also be solved with gene therapy, of course. That's one approach. It can also be solved with embryo editing. It can be solved with embryo selections. So right now you even have like a whole array of approaches of how to address a problem like that, and thousands of similar problems.
I've just got a quick question before you go on. You can't treat it retrospectively, though. When you say you could treat that with gene therapy, do you mean that you and your wife could have had gene therapy before you had a son, or do you mean that the son can be cured with gene therapy?
No. Treating parents is at current stage doesn't make any sense, because you have to modify the cells, the sperm cells and the egg cells, which will actually combine to form an embryo, right? So unless you modify those cells, it won't affect the child.
So, sorry to butt in again. So that would mean you have your genotype test, you realize that you and your wife are high risk for a hearing impaired child, and then you do the gene therapy on the egg and sperm. Is that right?
Well, it's never been done yet, I think, or was done once in China, and then the guy got imprisoned when he edited embryos. He got 3 years in Chinese prison and became a worldwide celebrity after that, because you cannot do embryo editing like that right now. But it's probably an option for the future. But what the most common use of gene therapy for disease right now is that you get a child born with a certain genetic anomaly, and it means that a very important protein encoded by that specific gene, it's malfunctional, right? So what they do is they deliver a very high dose of virus, and this virus encapsulates DNA. And this DNA gets injected by the virus inside like billions or maybe even trillion or so cells in your body. Those cells get on top of like malfunctional DNA and normal DNA, like a corrected DNA specifically for that protein. And that DNA gets used by the body by your cells to build your body. And that's like the development of a child goes a bit more normally than without that corrected DNA present. So the original DNA remains intact, but you get a new one on top. And that's like the main principle of gene therapy used right now. It's complementing your own DNA without any sort of modification with additional DNA.
So can you do it at a young age then? Is that in the case of your son? Would you do it when they're small? Or does it...
Yeah. If you take his gene specifically, there is no gene therapy available yet to fix his problem. Yeah, but if you would do that, you would need to do that very early on, because when the body is already developed, and in his case, he didn't get hair cells, so cells responsible for converting vibration into electrical signal, which travels through your nerve, hearing nerve, into the brain. So those cells didn't develop, and when they didn't develop, like no matter how you complement your DNA, like the cells, they don't grow constantly, and those organs, they don't form constantly throughout your life. So at a later age, it would be 100% ineffective. So in his case, only implantation, or maybe later on something like injecting specifically the stem cells that would grow those organs, something like that. So different approaches for different ages. And of course, same with any disease, the earlier you act, the easier it is to fix.
So you said you live in the
Netherlands.
The Netherlands. I assumed you lived in Próspera. No,
I just travel there from time to time.
So Unlimited Bio, the company, has employees in Próspera, or do you only go out there when you need to do actual therapies, or are there therapies happening all the time? How does it work? I've been to Próspera, but the last time I went was like 3 years ago, and I know a lot's changed since then. So.
We have a clinical partner there which works with the clients. So it's a clinic, GARM clinic, which is open 6 days a week or so, and they just accept patients. They review medical history, they do blood tests and so on, all what's required to make it a safe and a comfortable process. So we only need to deliver the therapy to them, and that's all what's required from us.
And have you got like a kind of menu of therapies you can get? I mean, how does it work?
Yeah, in GARM, you have a menu, so that they do all sorts of regenerative treatments, also stem cells and so on. And we provide them with, for now, it's a single therapy called VEGF. And soon we'll have a second one available called follistatin. So it's a gene responsible for muscle growth.
I've heard that. I think I heard about that on the Joe Rogan show. I think that was one of those things that people used to complain that they can't get hold of, follistatins, and because you're not allowed to get them in America or something. Is that right?
Well, follistatin, it's a protein which makes your, your body weight. It inhibits another protein called myostatin, and myostatin inhibits muscle growth. So there is like a cascade of events there. But if you increase the amount of follistatin protein present in your body, you'll basically get more muscle mass.
And the other one, VJF, what's that do?
That protein is released to build new blood vessels and capillaries locally. So, for example, when you get injured, the body needs to repair that injury, and this protein is secreted to build basically roads to that place to repair it, to make it more efficient. Also as a response to exercise, or I think also as a response to low content of oxygen or something like that. So you get those new capillaries formed, for example, within your muscle to increase blood supply. But the bad thing is that with age, this adaptive mechanism, it becomes less effective. So old people, like no matter how they exercise, it's harder for them to build new vessels. And the blood supply drops to all organs, like to your skin, to your hair, to your brain, to your muscle, and so on. So it's a very important process that declines with age.
I can attest to that, I think. 54. I don't think as fast. I definitely don't put on muscle as quick as I could when I was a kid, and I put on weight very easily. So, like, what's the connection between then this and longevity? Because the longevity world is quite a thing now, isn't it? And I think at the heart is this idea, right, that that age is possibly something that we shouldn't necessarily accept as fact. Aging, sorry, is that are you of the same sort of like belief?
Yeah, indeed. So we think that people should have the capacity to meaningfully affect the process of aging, because like no matter how much you exercise, how well you eat, what kind of drugs you take right now, you will still become old, eventually demented or incapable to stand up from your bed or to go to shopping or to have your grandson pick up your grandson or whatever you want to do at that age, and ski or walk around. So you'll become deprived of all those capabilities, and eventually you'll just die, even though you might not manifest any kind of diseases, like you might not die from cancer, but and you might be like, the doctors will say that you're in good health right now, like you're 80 years old, and they'll say like nothing we can do, you're good. But nobody would be surprised if the next day something happens. I know, like one of the arteries in your brain just pops, and that's it.
And am I right to assume that aging is an evolutionary adaptation to keep genotypes transforming? Like, is it presumably? I'm guessing that because it makes sense, because there's always a male and a female to create something new. Then that's the mixing of genes, and the more they mix, the better in a way, because then the selection is allowed to occur. So aging is an important, death especially is an important part of evolution in its natural state, not necessarily in a state where you have more control over things. Like we're entering that age now, obviously, where evolution is too slow for what the human mind wants, which is, I think, why everyone's so scared of it, because we all know that human minds aren't exactly reliable thinking sometimes, and they come up with terrible ideas. But do you think there's any? So first of all, is that true? Is death and aging an important part of life? And if so, what effect will it have if we start aging further?
Yeah. So well, first of all, that's one of the theories, that aging is like an adaptive process developed during evolution. But I think it's not the only approach to that. So it could be just a side effect, that basically evolution didn't care much about what happens after your reproductive age is over. For example, if you take primates, they're like grandparents. They play an important role in helping parents, and that's what we also experience as primates. That it's great to have grandparents around when you have kids growing up, right? So like evolution didn't want to kill us too fast, that's for sure. And another argument against that would be that there are species that survive well to this day that don't experience aging as we do. So such as snake mole rats, certain types of turtles that we cannot even tell like how old are they, and certain whales, sharks.
Trees. Hey, do you include things like that? Also, like I think a form of, I think some organisms like not fungus. What are they called? They live underground, and they're a network of. They live in association with trees. They can live for tens of thousands of years, can't they?
Well, if you take trees, it's very easy to say how old the tree is.
Yes.
So you could say that the tree does age, and then you get the super old trees where the inside degrades and only the outside remains. So I won't say that for trees, but and also trees are very distantly related to humans, to most of humans at least. And if you take naked mole rats, so those are mammals, so they're quite close to us, right?
Did you say naked mole rats?
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah,
I know that species. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what they don't? Tell me about that. What? How old do they live to then?
Well, I think they at least make it to their 20s or maybe even 30s, but I don't think that it's established yet, because to actually find this out, you need to isolate them, protect them from all sorts of environmental damage, from killing each other, from predators, and so on. And that's really hard, complicated, and expensive to make this experiment. I think people are trying that, but I didn't yet see conclusion of how old they can actually get.
But is the theory that they all die of something like accidents, trauma, whatever? They don't die of old. Is that right? Naked mole rats don't die of old age. That's bizarre.
Yeah, I think they have like extremely efficient repair mechanisms for DNA. So they kind of are able to maintain themselves in good shape throughout the years. And if you take like a 2-year-old guy and then a 20-year-old, and it would be extremely hard to tell the difference. And like for mice, it would be evident. And mice live just a few hours, and they're very similar in how they, even look like, and in terms of DNA also. But still, there are a few important distinctions in naked mole rats that, allow them to escape aging somehow. And that's also an important line of research to see what we can learn from them to translate that to humans.
What were the other ones you said that seem to defy aging? Which other sort of organisms?
Well, I would say turtles, because we know that they can live at least 150, but they're reptiles, so they're quite different from us. Also some types of sharks, whales, then also tiny organisms, like those amoebas, I think, and a few others. So there is a list of like organisms we should pay attention to and study what we can learn from them.
So, all right, then, if we start messing around with our average age, which, I mean, we've already messed around with it, really, because it used to be about 35, didn't it? And then with the industrial age, didn't we put the average age of a human dying up to about 70, 80 now? We're at 80. So even without adapting the human genome, we're already, by eating well, by being safer, by not dying in childbirth, all these things that are making our lives better. So what's it going to do if we, first of all, what do you imagine in the near future, let's say in an interesting way, how old could we expect to live to in, 40 or 50 years then, according to you, of what you know?
In 40 or 50 years?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm trying to think whether or not I've got enough time left to get on board so that I can live a bit longer. I'm 54, so if I was going to live to 90, I got 36, 54, 60, 70, yeah, I've got 36 years.
I think you have pretty good chances of not dying at all if you keep yourself in shape. Really? If that's what you could fancy, I mean.
Do I want to not die?
Eventually, it would be up to you. Yeah.
Do I want to not die?
Yeah, you tell me.
I mean, what's the philosophical implications with that? Are quite extreme. I'm thinking, number one, do I want to see my own children as 90-year-old people. That would be bizarre in its own right.
Why?
Why? Just because I've never imagined seeing them like that. But yeah, you're right. I would probably get used to it.
But they will look like you look right now, right? Because they will be functionally younger.
Oh, you don't age?
Just...
Oh, right. So I won't start looking old?
Yeah, that's the point.
Will I get stuck like this, or will I get better?
Well, eventually we hope that you might get better. I mean, but it's of course harder to achieve. So it's good for now to preserve yourself in good shape, you know.
So there might be an age I can aim for. I mean, it'd be great to be. Yeah, I enjoyed my 30s. I was in my prime in my 30s, mentally, physically, everything. You know, it'd be nice to go back to that and then just stop. But then again, would it? I don't know. I don't know whether my brain's designed to live for a very long time. I mean, is it? I think you do hear many stories of people in their old age, especially 90-year-old people saying, you know, being satisfied that they've lived a long and good life. Right.
Well, it's a way to kind of calm yourself down. And, you know, when you're 90, like your body, it adapts all the time. So kind of you get older, and if you take yourself in the 30s and yourself in the 50s, you can compare that you're not in the same shape. You got worse. But at the same time, you don't feel terrible every day you get up like, oh, I'm 55, God damn it.
No, but I've got a bad back.
Yeah, well, stuff like that, yeah, starts reminding you that you're actually old. But at the same time, like the brain adapts to all those things and it kind of accommodates the fact that we got older, and you accept more and more and more of that damage, and eventually, you know, like all those things like pain in the back and all those limitations that you acquire, I think you start getting a thought that, you know, death at a certain point would be, you would kind of not resist it that much, because if you like take a bird's eye view, you're way worse now than you used to be before. And I think that's what the people are afraid of becoming old. They see their parents debilitated, demented, and not being able to get out of bed on a wheelchair, and like spending half of their life in a hospital, and those constant medical exams or whatever, and constant death that something else will just snap, or you will fall and won't be able to get up. And that's what people are afraid of. Because as long as you're functioning okay, like, why die? You just continue living. If you feel good in the present day, like, next day is going to be good as well.
It is one of the cruelest, in my opinion anyway, one of the cruelest things about life is old age. Because you got it coming, and you can spend your life being incredible, doing inspirational things, but in the end you're going to die either in pain or very helplessly. And that is cruel, because you've gone through, you've known, like when you're first born, sure, you're helpless, but then you learn to survive, and then you thrive, and then you go back to being helpless again. And that seems cruel. That's a cruel ending.
Yeah.
You should be able to go out with a bang, shouldn't you? You should be able to go out with. But do you think people will choose to die then? If we can live forever, are people going to choose to die?
I'm sure some people will. I mean, there's also a lot of ideology behind that, a lot of culture. So, like, for the past 5,000 years, so we've been accumulating stories about death, explaining death, thinking about immortality, about what comes next, making mummies, making all sorts of stories, burial customs, flowers, coffins, gravestones. We accumulated such a huge cultural layer around death. It's immense. Like all those, movies where like somebody sacrifices himself for the good, or when somebody like has such a great life and then like dies relieved, surrounded by the loving people. Like all those, we kind of try to, people think about that all the time. You cannot exclude death, and the natural reaction is we'll try to find something positive about things, as long as there is nothing you can do. And like for the past millennia, there was literally nothing we can do about this. So that's why people were focusing on making mummies and like focusing on the stuff that's beyond, where they can also like take a look. And right now we see that we have all those biotechnological means. We kind of have a lot of pieces of that puzzle. We don't have the puzzle assembled yet, and we need to do like probably tens of years more of research. But we see that we can get there. That if we fix that process, and maybe 50 more processes, then we might have a meaningful effect on aging. You say that there is a lot of like attention to that field right now, but if you take funding and if you take especially research in humans, like it's almost nothing. Because 40 years ago, people were telling like this transhumanists and so on that we're gonna live forever in 20 years, and they're telling the same thing right now. We're gonna live forever in 20 years, but I don't see much change in the next 20 years. Unless we find frameworks how to accelerate clinical trials in humans, not in mice, not in worms or flies or whatever, but in humans. And I don't think there was such good hope for the future before Próspera appeared, where we really see how those trials can be achieved more or less right now, at least with what we have developed already.
It's amazing. You're a biomedical engineer, and you reckon that in my lifetime I could live forever. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It's fair to say. I think your life expectancy right now, even without any progress, is close to 100 years, and that gives us time. A lot of time.
Jesus, I better get on it. What's your spirituality, by the way? Do you have a spirituality? Like, how does that fit into all this? What do you have any beliefs about what would happen after death if you did die?
Well, I'm Christian. I was baptized. I didn't subscribe to that, but my parents did that to me. I don't mind. I always thought that religion and it's kind of contrary to what we do. So like that religious people, they eventually all want to die and transition to the next world of like an eternal happiness, white clothes and sunshine and whatever there is there. But I think some sort of interpretations of Bible, especially, they can be aligned with unlimited life extension on Earth, because like certain parts of the Bible hint that maybe we should build like a Garden of Eden here on Earth. So like God punished us with mortality a long time ago, right? Then we went all those technological progress with God's help. We researched like how he built this world, how he all the DNA, all the code he put into us, all the like the evolution we've gone through, and now we've come to a point where we can use all those tools that religious people would say he gave us to actually affect this curse he bestowed on us and build an immortal society, like a paradise on Earth. And I think the Bible allows for those kind of interpretations. Not all religious teachings, though, do. So some are way more strict and don't allow that kind of freedom of thinking in terms of immortality.
I wondered if you'd ever had a spiritual experience that made you think or believe or sense that after death something important was happening. So if you extend your life, you're basically you're stopping a natural process happening. I've recounted this story before on this podcast, but I had a death experience once, And not to put long and short of it, it was, and you could, I won't, I'll be honest, looking back, I could say this was just a bunch of neurons firing in my head, and it's all a lie. But to me, it seems really real. I was ill, wasn't that ill. I was lying on a bed, and the process of death started, and I recognized it. That's the only way I can describe it. It was a familiar process. It was like a moving towards something, and I was lying on the bed, and I thought, "Oh shit, I'm dying." I recognized this. It wasn't scary. It wasn't anything. It was just very familiar. And to cut a long story short, I didn't die, and it has a lot to do with me thinking how absurd what was happening was. I kind of stopped it happening. I wasn't dying because of something that was happening to my body. Although I was sick, I wasn't sick enough to be dying. But the two takeaways that I had from this experience, which at the time, like I wasn't thinking about this, I just knew this is the dying process. Number one, it was very familiar. I recognized it immediately. It wasn't scary. It wasn't anything. And number two is it was a birth. A death and a birth are the same thing. So a death is a birth into something, and a birth is a birth out of something else, if you see what I mean. But they're the same process. And like I say, I can't back this up with any scientific data or anything. And it was a number of years ago now. It was almost 20 years ago. But because I spoke about it at the time and I recounted it in my memory, it's become part of, something. I don't know what. But I think partly, number one, I'm not really afraid of dying. That sense. I'm afraid of the consequences of dying. I don't want to leave my children, for example. I also don't want to die in pain, but I know that's quite likely, unfortunately. Most people kind of do die with some form of pain unless they take like painkillers. But I just wondered if you'd ever had an experience which made you think that prolonging life beyond a certain point might be counterproductive because there's something else, if you see what I mean. Not that we're all going to heaven, because I quite like that idea that you've just posited, that because I think there's truth in it, that heaven is here. Like the idea of heaven for me, if I think about it in the religious sense, is this is heaven. Like I'm super happy. I love doing what I'm doing. I enjoy conversations. I wouldn't want to be doing anywhere else. If I went to heaven, it'd be the same as this, So I'm already here, for want of a better expression. And also, the thing I've always thought about heaven is, it seems a strange concept, because heaven's like forever. It's like, and I quite like the ups and downs of life. Do you know what I mean? Like I know when you're having strife and trouble and that, it's not nice. It's great. But when you are like this now, I'm feeling great. The only reason I know it is because a few years ago I was having a terrible time. And the thought of just being in heaven, this place where everything is beautiful, it seems really boring, in fact. It seems like, what, forever? Just like this, So I'm with you on that earlier one, that heaven is already here. Heaven is a manifestation of whatever you want. I don't think you need to wait to die to get it. You can get it here and now if you really want. But then maybe I'm underselling myself. But yeah, back to the thing. Do you think that there could be a negative to prolonging your life too long?
No.
Let's leave it at that.
but so yeah, a lot of points there. So I think it can make up for 3 podcasts at least. The first one, was your near-death experience? Was it somewhere near sleep time, or? It was
no. I was just very ill. It wasn't something that was life-threatening, but I was lying on my bed at my mother's house, just lying there because I was too weak to get up. Like I say, I can't prove any of this. All I know is, because I wasn't expecting anything to happen, I was just lying on my bed because I was weak. The process started, and as I did, it's like I knew what it was. I knew. Oh my God! It was very, very familiar, and it was the process of dying. That's the only way I can describe it. It would be like when a woman gives birth for the first time. I mean, I can't. You don't know what giving birth feels like, do you? Mm-hmm. But when it happens, and you know what's happening. because it's happening, but it's almost involuntary, like or love. The first time if you think you've never fallen in love with someone, and then you do fall in love with someone, or all the different facets of love, they're all quite familiar. You can label them as something without, the difference between anger and love, for example, without someone having to tell you what the difference is. And in my case, with the process of dying was very familiar to me, and it was also a birth. The birth and death process are the same. They're just a movement between places, if you see what I mean.
If it was the process of dying, why didn't you die?
Do you want to hear the funny side? I started dying and I started going with it, and then it occurred to me, my brain went, "You can't die. Literally, your mother is downstairs cooking food. She's going to come up here. There's going to be a dead kid on the bed. This is the most absurd thing," and it brought me back to reality. That's the truth of it. So I know it all sounds a little bit far-fetched, but I have no other way of explaining this. It was real, and I don't even think about it much. If it comes up in conversation, I'll gladly talk about it. But for a long time it had quite a profound effect on me, because I stopped being scared of death. Not that I even really thought about it, but since I'm not scared of dying. However, since I had children, there's this new layer now, because I would hate to leave them as children. Maybe as adults it would be easier, but as children, so there's this, I don't want to die now. Not because I'm fear of dying, but I don't want to leave my children because they need me, But yeah, that's the absurd part. Is my brain literally pulled me back, because it just seemed absurd. Because when it started happening, I went, "Oh, I'm dying," and then I went, like a few seconds later, it was like, "What the fuck are you doing? Don't die. You're like 23. Your mum's downstairs. You're this. You're that. And it stopped it happening. So I don't know why, when. I don't know why it happened, but certainly I knew it was death. That's all I can say.
Have you heard about this phenomena when you have sort of dreams, but
lucid dreams?
Lucid dreaming.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you explored that?
I have had plenty of lucid dreams. Yeah, I've had a lot of lucid dreams. In fact, I know that experience very well. But this wasn't. This was different. This was not that. Because for me, lucid dreams happen at the point of sleep, and I wasn't.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, there are people who, well, at least they claim that they do some sort of training, and you can put yourself into that kind of trance, lucid dreaming, also while awake. But usually you have to lie down or something, but do certain manipulations like meditations or whatever, and get into that state. So.
But let me explain it another way then. It could have been a lucid dream. I have no way of knowing, right? But the point is, if I lucidly dreamt about tasting an apple, right? I'm still tasting an apple, if you see what I mean. What the overarching experience that I had was, I am dying. And there was no reason to think that. There was no, the only reason that I thought it was because I recognized it. Regardless if it was a lucid dream, it could have been a lucid dream, but I was still recognizing the experience of dying, if you see what I mean. Like I would have done if I'd have ate an apple in a lucid dream. I would have gone, "Oh, it tastes like an apple," because I know what an apple tastes like.
Well, imagine you see an apple and your brain is like, "Oh, an apple. I'll go take a bite of that apple." Then you bite it and you realize it's a fake apple made of wax, and you're like, "Damn!"
Yes.
And so your brain is really good at fooling yourself as well. So it kind of just maps a certain experience to something that you already experienced before, because that's the only way it can work, right? It cannot map it to something you never experienced, because you probably don't know how it feels like.
Well, that would assume then that I've experienced dying before, which I think that was my understanding from it. The only reason I recognized it is because it was a familiar thing, and whatever, I don't know what that means. That could mean a lot of things, but it certainly meant that at least when I was born, I was dying from something, if you see what I mean. So to be born was a death from something. To die was a birth into something new. That's my takeaway. And like, God knows what it means. I don't know, but I mean, it's not even necessarily important here. What is important is whether or not we should stay forever, if you see what I mean. Like,
just getting back to your question about near-death experience, I've had a similar thing at the time that I, tried to practice lucid dreaming a bit and got interested in that phenomena. And it happened somewhere, after waking up or before falling to sleep, when I also had a feeling of like being sucked in a black hole or something like that, and I became like insanely terrified and like I shook it off and just flew out of bed or something. So I was like, the sense of terror was immense, and like you're really falling into a black hole. And I didn't connect that to dying. I connected that to some sort of weird lucid dream experience. But yeah, it was terrifying. I thought maybe I could have connected that to dying if my, at that time I was, deeply into longevity or something like that. Maybe I would have made this connection.
What did you decide? Like, what did you decide a lucid dream was after that experience?
I thought it was like a sort of transition into a lucid dream and maybe some sort of, sleep paralysis also, when you wake up and you cannot move on top of that, something like that. So it didn't feel nice. It felt terrifying, and I think kind of very much lowered my enthusiasm towards lucid dreaming. And that's like the only conclusion I made after that.
But what do you think lucid dreaming is? That's what I mean. Like, what is it?
Well, it's a certain state of mind. I think that it is like a scientifically established phenomenon because people did really, track the eyeballs of participants who experienced lucid dreaming, and they said they can enter that state. So they entered and they literally tracked their eyeballs, and they were supposed, I think, to do certain tasks while in lucid dream. So do like specific movements to convince the researchers that they are controlling their eyeballs while they are in dream state, and at the same time you do an ECG of brain waves, and you really see that the person is in rapid eye movement, so in dream phase of sleep. And so I think it's an established phenomenon. I don't know if it's of any use. I don't know what it means. Why is it there? Like, no idea. But
my lucid dreaming experience is quite bizarre, and I haven't done this for ages. But I used to be able to see through my eyes with my eyes shut in lucid dreams. So when I entered a lucid dream state, I could see around me, even though I was lying there with my eyes shut.
Yeah.
They should have put some things on my brain to see what was going on, because once again, could be all kinds of stuff, could be my recollection of what I was seeing, but I'd had experiences where I saw things that were happening around me when my eyes were shut, but not like from some strange vantage point, but literally through my eyes with my eyelids down.
Yeah.
So, I know I've had a lot of weird experiences.
What I thought about lucid dreams is that it might explain a lot of those prophets and phenomena that occurred throughout the world history. When you just get, one guy or girl like Jeanne d'Arc that has some sort of very, profound interaction with some spiritual entity. And of course, when you are like a 12 or I don't know how old she was, a 14-year-old girl in medieval France, like, what else could you map it to but interaction with God and or some sort of connected spiritual thing? And this, I think, one of the mechanisms how we got all those, prophets and enlightened people. It's maybe not the only mechanism, but it could be actually this lucid dreaming thing. It might have played a way more important role in history of humanity than we think it did.
Hallucinogenic compounds, the same.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Psychedelics. Yeah.
But once again, what are they? I've had the episode which is online. The latest episode of this podcast was a 3.5-hour conversation I had with a Swedish doctor about the majority, well, not the majority, but probably half of it is about hallucinogens and ayahuasca and all that kind of stuff. DMT is particularly, you know what DMT is? Because that's a fascinating one. If you're into the brain and DMT and experiencing something else other than the physical realm, DMT is just mind-blowing because it already exists in the body anyway. It's just broken down a lot. And you know, I mean,
did you try it yourself?
No, I haven't. That's the thing. I missed that, but I did hallucinogens but before I knew anything about things like that. And as I got older, like, I'd love to do it now, I think, but I'm apprehensive of it completely blowing my mind when I live in a very simple environment with children and a family, and when I was younger, I could trip and I could take mushrooms and do acid and all these things and just explore myself. I suppose now I'm worried that I'll do that and decide to completely change my life, become a hermit, and then what happens to my family? There, it's not, because you never know. I mean, they show you yourself, those things. They show you who you are, and if you realised you were living a lie or something, that would be terrible. I wouldn't want to inflict that on my children. But there's always that risk, and also I think in my 30s. I had very good psychedelic experiences for a very long time. And then in my 30s, I had one bad trip, which scared me. I went to a place which I would call the pit of despair, of complete disconnection from life, the universe and everything, holding on by a minute thread. And it was horrible. It was absolutely the darkest night of the soul for me. And I don't want to do that again. I really don't. And I know the possibility's always there now, because I can sense it. And you know what it's like? Presumably you've done hallucinogens, have you?
Yeah, I tried some.
Right, okay. So you know that when you take them, it's like you're getting on a bus. When the bus goes, you go with the bus. There's no getting off. And if that bus is going towards a cliff, and the driver's intent on going there, you go off the cliff. And if you don't want to go off the cliff, it makes it worse, because if you resist it. So and I wouldn't necessarily say my psyche is strong enough to embrace the darkest side of this stuff. I don't even know whether it's going to be there or not. I've got no idea. But because I've experienced it, I know the possibilities there, and I feel I have very important and strong real life responsibilities that I don't want to jeopardize, if you understand what I mean,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. Well, looping into what you said before, like, how do you know that after death you won't end up in a pit of despair? That would be fucked up, If you
exactly.
died, it like sucks.
It could be.
Then why didn't I live forever? I had the means.
Well, you're right there. You're absolutely right. But in my experience of the pit of despair, it changed. It's just that when you're in the pit of despair, it feels like infinity. But it changes. And one of the lessons of life is everything changes. That's, for me, as a 54-year-old bloke. I teach this to my kids all the time when... my daughter, my eldest, the other day was deeply distraught because of, she was having a problem with her horse, and it's horrible. A girl and a horse, she's only 13. Yeah. It's one of the strongest bonds, right? Yeah. And I find myself, when I'm consoling her, I'm saying, look, everything passes. And remember this, because the way you feel now, in 2 or 3 hours, possibly, you'll feel different. And I'm going to come to you and I'm going to say, Alice, do you remember what I said? Right, now you realize everything changes. So that thing you're feeling now is not forever. And you know that because you get proven that over and over and over again. It also happens for the good times. When you're feeling great, it happens as well. You take the rough with the smooth. But when you're feeling bad about something and when something's feeling tough, it changes. And I think it becomes one of those rules of life. Everything changes. So, and I would probably, that would be my mantra if I ever took hardcore psychedelics again, I think.
Yeah,
but whether
that helps. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. But
that's one of the tips they actually officially give, to ground yourself, that like everything passes and that kind of stuff. I think, there are all sorts of manuals written about this, like how to do this responsibly and so on.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah. There are like whole books written about this by guys who did that, especially in the US in the 50s. They had so much research going on about LSD there and so on before it was all shut down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would love to. I mean, like I say, I feel like probably I will again, because I know how much stuff there is out there in that world that I want to experience, basically.
That's the perfect reason why you need to live forever. So as long as you actually wish to experience new stuff, like be it like traveling or exploring your mind or exploring different human beings, planets, places, new freedom cities being built, witnessing new cities emerging where there was just desert and so on. Like there's an infinite amount of possibilities, like writing music, I don't know, learning to play instruments, whatever you fancy, doing sports, competing with people and so on. That's, as long as you are interested in all those things, and as long as these things, they mean a lot to you, why would you go and die instead? Like, why go for that option and you have no idea what's beyond? Maybe there is something, maybe there is not, but as long as you're basically enjoying yourself, why do that?
I agree. I do agree with you. I just think that people have been dying for like thousands of years, haven't they? Maybe I'll do ayahuasca on my 200th birthday then. That'll be something to aim for. But no, I can't disagree with you. I think it's absolutely true. And I think when you live in the moment, age doesn't matter anyway. Like if you think about age, if you think about your past and your future, then it matters. But really, right now, you and me talking, it doesn't matter anything. Nothing matters. All that matters is what's happening between you and me. And I could be 30 right now. In fact, I don't feel that different. I don't actually feel much different. I still identify with myself as the me of the past. I can't really remember being a child that much, but being in my 20s and 30s and 40s, nothing's changed necessarily. My ideas might have changed, my ideology, and I've learned a few skills, but other than that, it's me. I don't feel like any different. So that would presumably stay the same as well.
Yeah, you might never will, because the change is so slow that unless you experience severe breakdowns, medical emergencies, and so on, you might not realize that. And I think that's how people actually approach their health. They just keep on flowing, and then something breaks, and they're like, "Oh, it just actually exists." And then for some of them, it's like the tipping point when they start actually doing something about their health. And sometimes this tipping point is actually the last thing they experience, because usually, like the most common symptom of a heart attack is death. So usually, just it's too late. So it's good to start early.
I suppose there's a part of me that doesn't mind the thought of dying. I think because that's life. You know what I mean? It sounds a bit wishy-washy.
A bit wrong.
Well, it's just a bit wishy-washy. It's like, I feel like it's fair that you get a shot at life, and then you live your life, and then you die. I think that's fair. Everyone's got it. Everyone's doing it, and people live great lives, and I think we celebrate people that live good lives. But then they die, and then they're forgotten, actually. And then they're forgotten very, very quickly. Even the most famous people. It's a very few people that actually get remembered for more than a generation. So really, a lot of what we do here, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It matters to us in the moment. but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter, But how that relates to longevity, I'm not sure, because I think probably if you asked anyone, do you want to die, unless they were in extreme pain, they'd probably say no.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to live forever.
Yeah, I don't like the word fair, because is it fair that you're sitting here in a suit and there are people dying from thirst or from hunger? The world is an extremely unfair place. And there are also people who are billionaires, with huge swimming pools and flying helicopters and private jets and whatever. So it's extremely unfair. But the fact that this happens, it doesn't imply that death should be the great equalizer. The fact that this billionaire or dictator dies doesn't make your life better. So I think that it's a comforting thought sometimes that you can live whatever life you want, but we will still die. But in fact, it shouldn't be, because if you spend your first 50 or 60 years working your ass off and trying to get out of poverty or escape from some sort of really dangerous place, a war, some sort of humanitarian conflict, and then you end up, for example, in Europe as a refugee, and you're already in your 60s, and your brain already is not good enough to even learn the local language and start a new life. So you're just basically preparing already to die. You just do the things you can do, watch TV or whatever, and then spend time with your children, hopefully, and that's it. But in case we are able to extend that sort of longevity, everyone gets a shot to realize all those opportunities that they didn't have because they were initially deprived of those, just because of how they were born. So actually, in a certain world, I'm not saying that's where we're going. Maybe it's going to go wrong, but immortality can be the great equalizer and not death.
It'd be interesting to thought experiment how this would relate on the timeline with artificial intelligence. Because if you track that forward enough, many human qualities become completely redundant, and which is fine, but now they're redundant forever, as opposed to now they're redundant for 70, 80, 90 years and then you die. Now they're redundant forever. And I don't know what the implications of that are. I barely really wrapped my head around the fact that all human functions might actually become redundant anyway, which theoretically they will.
In a professional sense.
Yeah, in the sense that an AI will be able to think better than you and do better than you, whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, there are factories that produce, kitchen supplies better than you do, but doesn't mean you still can make a spoon and sell it on the market, and people will actually pay more for that spoon. So you can still do things that you like to do, like drive a car, even though AI is way better than you driving a car, right?
What I mean is then that there will be an infinite abundance of everything. So in a way, it will take the meaning out of many things. So take driving a car. Your dream might be to drive a sports car. Well, in the distant future, you'll just be able to conjure up anything you want. So will that devalue the experience of wanting to drive some unobtainable car or some very luxury car? I don't necessarily know, but it could do.
Well, it could. It's called, I think, there's a term like hedonistic adaptation. The more access you have to all sorts of luxuries, and those luxuries start to mean less to you, and they become regular things to you, not luxury anymore.
Oh yeah, that definitely happens. I mean, that happens on a small scale with me, with whatever.
But, it's at the same time, there is stuff which is not accessible to some people at all, like healthcare or quality food or, some very basic things. And if those things become accessible, then it's a universal good, because, if you see the correlation between income and happiness, you can see that happiness grows until a certain income. So if we have this universal basic income established and it's high enough, then it could be like a very positive society. But I'm not super positive about AI, to be honest. So I don't know like my position on that, because I'm also at the same time concerned. Sometimes I get some sort of AI depression for a few days, because on one thing, it can make the world a better place, and again it can help us with the research, what we do in terms of aging. But at the same time, it can also in certain scenarios wipe us out completely, and you cannot exclude this possibility.
I think for me, AI will be a forcing function for us humans to take responsibility for ourselves, for what we want to do, because we will have much more opportunity to decide what we want to do, because many of the things that we're currently forced to do in a way, or at least coaxed into doing, we won't need to do. So we'll be left with this opportunity. And I'm in two minds, because I've in various times in my life I've had masses of opportunities, and in those moments I've found decision making much harder than when I've been forced into a situation where there aren't that many options. Mm-hmm. So with the AI future of abundance, I think it might be quite debilitating for people, myself included. What am I going to do? Because I really do have to, and that, as a result, I really do have to take full extreme responsibility for doing what I do, because I'm almost certain I'll limit myself in certain ways. If everything is abundantly available, and for me, that often means that a lot of things are going to lose their meaning a bit. So I'm going to limit myself. I'm going to make things harder for myself. So or I'm going to do things which are pointless. Really, in the eyes of an AI, this is a pointless, because like you say, I can do that better than you. The AI is like, I could cook. You could have a Michelin-starred chef robot cooking you food every single day. But what difference is that after 100 days to you eating rice and something every day? It's the same. It's just a different level of existence. You'll still get accustomed to it, if you see what I mean.
I think we're already doing that. So we're doing that right now. Like, imagine people 1,000 years ago thinking like, what if you would have water every day?
Yes.
What if you would have, like, you don't have to put up a fire to cook every day? What if you could have, an ability to wash your clothes and not have to walk 3 kilometers to the river or something? And we kind of already adapted to that. And now we find pleasure in like taking a cold shower. For example, some people do, like me, although we have hot water, and we don't just sit in front of the screen and just have a pipe with sugar or like our whipped cream or whatever into our mouth and like sucking on that. Although we have that capability, right? So we are kind of already realizing that, and we are implementing these sorts of like challenges, tiny challenges for ourselves to keep us going. Like, we go hiking for no reason, or we climb mountains, or we cross the oceans on a sailing boat. So we already do all those sorts of challenges, and I think maybe AI won't change that much. We'll hopefully still have the capability to go hike and do the stuff which is
I'm sure
demanding.
We will, but for me personally, there's a big difference between say climbing to the top of a very difficult mountain that's been done by thousands of people, or that's been done by no people, or that I can't just sit on a thing and it takes me up there. Because I've experienced this in my life. I've traveled a lot over my life, and I've traveled places which have changed drastically. A good example being, I made a film once in the Himalayas about children who used to go to school from a very high part of Ladakh in the Himalayas. They had to walk for 5 days down the frozen river to get to boarding school. right? And it's real hardship, and took 5 days, sleeping in little caves and around fires every night and stuff. And it was very, very cold and very dangerous. And now there's a road. So since then, a road has been built. So you can just drive it in less than a day. Now, I'm far less inclined to walk down the river now as a challenge to myself, because you see cars going by and stuff. Whereas, literally 25 years before that, the only way down was to brave down walking across the chadar, they call it, the ice. And it was dangerous. If you fell through, that was it. You were gone, So I can definitely think that it's going to be tougher to find challenges that seem meaningful to me, because
the real challenges.
Yeah, a proper challenge. Well, like if because I think a lot of our best challenges we're forced into, aren't we? Like even now, like we you and me, we've both got to earn a living, right? If I was a multi-millionaire, I actually would be doing this podcast, but it wouldn't be the same. And I may not have ended up doing it to begin with, more to the point. There is in this hardship that gut life gives you, there are some very important drivers for us, aren't there? That's really what drives us. The most adaptive and the most innovative I've ever been is when I've been forced. And not when I'm just sitting pretty going, oh, well, like things are chugging along nicely and stuff. What AI might do is take away that forcing function, because there might always be the option to say, oh, do you know what? I could just get that to do it. Or my personal robot, which will be like a phone is now. There'll be a personal robot, won't there? And it will be able to do all kinds of stuff for you. And we might have personal transportation that can fly places, or probably, I don't know. But there'll be harder challenges. And do you know what I've often wondered is, at that point, do the challenges become spiritual? That's why, because that might be something that AI might not be able to compete with us on, because arguably we're alive and they're not. Whatever that means. Aliveness, life. Life is something that I think we all acknowledge, but whether or not AI can ever have life, I don't know. Some people say yes, some people say no. So there will be things they don't compete with us on. And so they'll be the places, they'll be the frontier, I presume. I really don't know. I mean, I can't wait to find out in one sense, but you, I do have my doom days where I'm
if you stay alive, you'll find out.
Yes, you're absolutely right, actually. Vladimir, you're right.
So you always have a way out, so no reason to worry right now,
Yeah. So, all right, we better wrap up soon, because my next person's coming in 12 minutes. Do you think that we would choose to die then? Do you think choosing to die will become a cultural thing?
It might very well become, a cultural thing. I think some people, we have a lot of people who don't take vaccines right now. And there will be people who reject any kind of immortality drugs, and maybe they just resort to the life, to a more like primitive kind of lifestyle, deprive themselves of those technological advantages, and just decide they...
I actually mean not people rejecting longevity. I mean people having longevity and then deciding philosophically, right, I should die.
Yeah, well, there always will be suicide. I mean, you cannot get rid of that. And that's what people do right now as well. So they just decide that either life is too bad, or they had enough, or they do some sort of risky stuff and they die. So it's kind of like indirect suicide, so to say. So yeah, I think that will still take place. So they won't be like technical immortality. It's just...
I suppose what I mean is, even suicide seems like the wrong way to describe it. I mean, the choice to die will be a natural and good one. That's what I mean. Like, so imagine you are 1,000 years old. I don't know. There might be a realization that dying is important, not because you're depressed, not because you're you want to, not for a reason that seems that we don't really understand yet.
It could be. Maybe even, the governments will incentivize people to this kind of behavior.
They already do that in Canada, don't they? No, they do that. Oh, anyway, that's a whole other thing. But God, if the government's incentivizing it, I'll definitely stay alive. If they want me to die, I'm staying alive.
There is still war, so it's kind of, it's happening. So, it might very well be. So, the more you live, the more opportunities open up, and all kinds of those weird phenomena might occur. So we have to be. I know if we have to be ready to face them, we'll face them anyway. So for now, it's a bit early to go in that direction. But it's for now we have 0 things that slow down aging, reliably proven in humans. So I think we should focus on that and. Then we'll for sure face various societal transformations and maybe protests and maybe even some violence. But it doesn't mean we don't need to go that way. So we for sure need to think about those things in advantage. But I think it's still a good thing that we will, it's the best thing ever that we will protect people from the biggest killer on the planet. We'll give the people an option to opt out of this, misery and death.
Right. Hallelujah to that. You're going to... Well, I'm glad that you think I'm going to be able to live together. My kids are going to be so happy about that. That's the first thing I'm going to tell them next time I speak to them. Because that would... Well, I mean, if I said, look, someone who knows about biohacking thinks that I will live forever if I choose to. If someone had told me that when I was a kid, there would have been a little less trauma in my life, because I did think about death when I was small. And it's not a nice thought at all, is it? When you're small. I don't know whether you thought about it. I remember when a bird flew into our kitchen window once and died and fell on the floor when I was very young, and I saw it. And we buried it in the back garden, and I remember crying my eyes out for hours, sobbing and it was I think it was the first time I understood that death happened as a kid, But yeah, I mean, losing your loved ones, that fills me with dread sometimes.
That's an important consideration, because every death, it's not just about you, but it's also people around you. So if you so to say lived a good life and you surrounded yourself with people whom you love and who love you, then if you go away, all those people will be 100% guaranteed suffering. And sometimes this suffering will be a very long time. It could be years, it could be tens of years. They will feel that emptiness that when interacting with objects or with the activities, you will keep coming to mind, and they will feel deprived of your attention, your love, and so on. So that's a huge loss. It's an empty hole that cannot be filled, or it takes a lot of time to fill. So I think it's terrible. What's going on right now, and there's. It's happening 2 times a second almost in the world. So during our talk, thousands of people died, and probably tens of thousands are suffering because those thousands died. So there's a lot of sorrow.
All of earlier you mentioned all the different ways we honor death. Funerals, mummies, all this kind of stuff. I think that's the cultural mechanism for exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. And maybe you're right. Maybe you in growing old, or not in growing old, in staying alive within the power of your own self, you could choose, if you wanted to die, you could choose a point in which you would inflict the least pain, which would be possible, because I think, in my case, it's, leaving my children when they're young, as opposed to leaving them when they're sort of in their 40s, would be a different thing. I can imagine, fortunately, both my parents are still alive, but whenever I've done a thought experiment with them dying, I feel comforted by the fact that they lived a good life, both of them, very good lives. But when you're a child, that's not true. You don't understand that concept. You just want your mum and dad. You don't, But I think, I'm still obviously different to you. I'm still in the idea of like death is a natural part of life. And
it is a natural part of life, but a lot of stuff is a natural part of life, and we try to get rid of that stuff. So like cancer, it's a natural part of life, but we're still trying to solve it. And I think everybody considers it the best course. Like virus is a natural part of life. And the fact that it's natural, I don't think it means anything. I don't even know what's natural. Like everything is natural. We are
No, you're
children
right.
of the universe. Like everything is natural, but we are trying to make our lives better and not think what's natural and what's not natural.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a stupid idea, really. But it's because it's because I don't live in the world you live in. I'm almost certain because you work in that world, it's become part of your consciousness that living forever is a solvable problem.
Well, it has become part of my consciousness before I started working there. It's what led me to working here.
Really?
Yeah. That's why I decided to get educated in biomedical engineering and so on.
That's interesting. What problem? I've got to knock it on the head in a couple of minutes. But can you briefly say why that? Do you know why that thought originally came to your mind? Because it's quite a radical thought, if you think about it in the beginning, to decide that death is not necessary.
I think radical thoughts, when the kind of realization comes, they tend to stick because maybe you feel at a certain age that you're kind of a revolutionary, you're against what people think, but this thought makes a lot of sense to you. And I think I first interacted with the scientist called Vladimir Leshko. He passed away since then, but he was a huge figure in biology in Russia, and he developed a type of antioxidant. And at that time, the oxidative theory of aging was super popular. That like reactive oxygen species kill you from the inside, from mitochondria. So he found a way to tackle that. Since then, this theory was completely busted, and his antioxidant, I think, yet wasn't effective in treating any kind of disease. But his work led me to realize that aging is actually, it's a very complicated, but it's a biological process that unwraps in the body, and we can kind of approach it from different angles. It has a lot of angles to it, a lot of components. But if we maybe simultaneously attack it from different angles, we can do something about that process. So I think I was not really maybe that much inspired by defeating death because it's so far-fetched, but by the fact that we have like this very mysterious unknown process also like embedded in our culture. And we can kind of discover, study it, and find ways how to tackle that. So it's like a very mystical scientific problem, and people are almost not paying attention to that. So it's like ending up in a very curious place in a new country, but very unexplored. So kind of you immediately feel the wish to share it to your friends or something like, look, I ended up in this place and it's like so amazing. There's so much things to do here to see, and nobody talks about it, or like you don't see a documentary on National Geographic about that or whatever. And I think this kind of like new horizons is what inspired me, and that's why I started, first focusing on, biohacking and that kind of stuff, supplements and all that. And then eventually had an education in that field, did a master's degree in biomedical engineering, and later on joined Unlimited Bio.
Wow. Well, look, sorry to cut you off, but that's a time constraint, something we may not have in the future. We could talk for years. But many thanks for sharing your story, Vladimir. I always veer down the mind I always veer down the sort of thought experiment when people start talking about longevity, because I just think there's going to be some existential questions that will need answering, and but I'm happy it's happening, and I'm so happy that you think I might be able to choose, because I will choose to live. Don't get me wrong. There's 100%. I'm not sure what will happen, but I would choose to live 100%. So thanks for coming in, and it's great talking to you, and good luck with everything.
Amazing. Thank you, Timothy. Thank you so much for having me. It was very insightful conversation. I enjoyed it so much. So thank you.